Dr. Jazz.
Listened to your music for such a long time, and I've seen you live actually in Ljubljana with Herbie in 1990 something, 8 or 7 maybe.
Ah,
And
yeah, I somehow remember that gig in Ljubljana.
yeah, it was like this open theater venue, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, I remember going there with them. I'm just gonna go to another room just
Sure.
so it doesn't people walk. It should be a little quieter. All right.
All righty. But I'll just start with the obvious. I know probably you've been asked this question now 6 zillion times. But I'll start with the latest new standards project that you've been doing. And there's two parts, I guess, the music that you recorded with your band and of course the book. And I first want to start, where did you get the idea to do actually the book? And I guess from my point of view as a musician, I've always played compositions by women composers and men composers. I mean, but I see it as music, but like you decided to do this amazing volume of music by some incredible musicians. Like, where did the initial idea come from, and how did you proceed when selecting the tunes? I mean, I really want to know that. Like,
yeah. Well, the idea originally happened because I did an event when I opened the Institute at Berkeley, Institute of Jazz and Gender Justice. And I asked them to play some standards, written by women. And the musicians were having a hard time trying to find any. So I thought, okay, this will be the first initiative of the Institute. Come up with a collection. So if anybody just wants to play songs written for women for any reason, they have, someplace to go for it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let's make it 100. So there will be like varying styles and people from represented from various generations.
Yeah. How did you choose compositions? Let's say, Jerry Allen, or I don't know, whoever, like of these amazing composers who has a huge opus of compositions. Like, how did you decide for that one tune, let's say?
There's a lot of factors, but a lot of the songs, at least with the artists that I know and I've worked with, I've played their music over the years and have my favorite songs. So I could choose that way. But also I wanted songs that could fit on 1 or 2 pages, no more than 2 pages, for the format we were looking for. Some people I went to and I said, I love these 2 or 3 songs of yours. What do you think? Which one would you like? Other people, I said, can you send me a few of your songs and I can choose which one? Some people, I just wanted whatever they wanted to submit. And I just said, just send a song with a page or 2. So it was just varying approaches depending on how well I knew the person's music and, and what kind of composer it was.
Yeah. How do you see yourself within this? I love your compositions. I think one of the first albums I got from you was Structure, and then there's this tune, Mindful Intent, I think it's called, like the first one. And you've written so much stuff. Like, how do you proceed there as a composer? Do you have like a daily schedule or routine?
I wish.
Do you start like with a melody or chord progression or rhythm actually, or
Yeah, mostly it starts in my head. It could be just a melody, or it could be an ostinato. Like when you mentioned Mindful Intent, and I think probably that bass ostinato was the first thing I thought of for that one. But most songs, I think, start with, melody. And if I'm writing it, because I'm not a pianist, if I'm writing on a keyboard, I'll play the melody, and then I'll start finding roots, bass notes that will work with it. And then that immediately, implies a chordal structure, and then I, find the rest of the chords. But if you have a root and a melody note, then it implies something as a chorus. And then I start hearing what goes around that.
Did you ever talk about, like, you played with so many band leaders as well, of course, like, did you talk with them ever about composition, like with Wayne or Herbie or Jerry Allen, or like how they compose?
Not really. I've watched Wayne compose, and he can just do it all in his head.
Wow, man.
So he just sits with, pen and paper, and I don't, I can't do that. So but it does speak to hearing things in your head opposed to formulas. So I think that I really do agree with that.
That's important.
I haven't really talked to people. I mean, pianists, they can sit down and just start playing things and working things out through their own improvisations. And then a lot of, other people, bassists, horn players, and some drummers, can sit down to the piano and do that too, improvise into something. So I think everybody has their own method, their own way or approach.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, some people are so prolific, when I've spoken to so many composers and musicians, and some write every day, they have like a snippet, and most of us, I think, are bound just to a project. You have like a recording in September, so oh shit, I have to write like 11 tunes now, so it's like pressure. And
exactly, that's me. I have to do it for deadlines.
But I wanted to ask you also about your band, New Standards Volume 1. How did you decide for those musicians? I know you played with most of them, of course, in other contexts and your own groups as well. And are there going to be like other volumes as well with the compositions from the book?
Well, that's the idea, and it doesn't have to be all me. So I want to try to get somebody else to do volume 2. And maybe I'll function as a producer. But kind of want to maybe approach it like just playing the songs from the book. Like I did a lot of arranging some of the songs, but the other way is really just playing the songs from the book as if you were doing it on a gig and you just pulled up the book. So that might be an easy way to do a quick volume 2 and see what happens.
Yeah, it would be cool to have like a box set actually of all the tunes like that are in the book, like also played by bands and stuff. That would be incredible.
Yeah, that would be great.
Well, it's a big one, of course. Yeah. Yeah,
it's like 9 albums or something like that.
Yeah, come on. That's a good one. But I wanted to ask you also about Wayne. There's like this Live at the Detroit Jazz Festival, which came out, I think, quite recently. And it's amazing. It's just like I think you had a certain chemistry with Wayne always when I heard you play. And how was your meeting with Wayne in the 80s already, and development through the years and playing with him? I mean,
I'm just going to close the door here so the dog. Oops. Okay. I met Wayne, went to audition. I met him at a gig, and then shortly after that, I auditioned for his band and got the gig. And that started a very long, beautiful musical mentorship, spiritual mentorship. And he really helped me like step into, into the jazz world. I don't know how to say it, like in a real solid way. You know what I mean? I mean, I had played with a lot of great people, but playing with him kind of solidified me a little differently. And yeah, I'll never, always give him that credit, and always really look at that moment as a pivotal moment, pivotal moment in my young career, because I was 21.
Wow.
When I started playing. So.
How was he like towards you, as a band leader towards you guys? Did he ever talk about music, or like even when you played, with Danila, and when you on that part of the tour, I think like when you replaced Brian, like did you talk about
No,
music, or it's just like jumping in and?
Yeah, it's kind of jumping in, and I mean he talks about it a little bit, but very not like specific necessarily, music things, but more like conceptual, but how he looks at music, which is not in a way, there's a lot of analogies and analogies with life, analogies with other things and movies and just all kinds of other areas of life that he's relating to the music. And yeah, that makes you think differently. Yeah, this is not just a bunch of notes, it's not just rhythm and notes. It's actually something that means something, and something that's related to other people's humanity. And how you can be purposeful and mission driven.
Yeah, especially like his lines always when he played them. It was like so strong when he comes in, when the band does an improv and he just jumps in with a line. It's like, okay, we're here, and it's everything. I love that. I love the quartet. It's just I got some bootlegs of how they play it, and it's just this live stuff. It's even more incredible than the studio stuff. It's just brilliant, brilliant playing. Yeah,
beautiful. That's why I'm really, so happy that we got that Detroit record out there.
Yeah.
Because I never got to play like that really with Wayne. And I mean, imagine, for me, that was just one gig. And I did like a few gigs here and there based on just subbing or whatever. But when I was playing with him, it was more groove oriented stuff.
Yeah.
But for me, it was great to get that out there. And it showed me, like, as I always felt a little bit like, wow, how would I have developed as a drummer if I was able to play more on that high level of improvisation, like with him, like he started doing later. So I got a glimpse of that, from that Live in Detroit record, and yeah, it felt good.
Yeah, it's not nice to hear him like really like that endangered species. I think it's like 20 minutes long, and you just like really stretch it out on that one. It's such a nice one, yeah.
Yeah.
To hear that. But I wanted to ask otherwise, like if speaking of Wayne, I guess, or heroes, like who were was there a record or an album or a concert that you saw, jazz wise or improvised, that you said like, okay, I want to do that, like jazz and improvisation?
No, I don't think so.
No?
No.
How did you enter the jazz world? I mean,
playing there was no specific moment. I feel like I was always there. My dad just took me to concerts from when I was young, and I sat in playing tambourine with Rushen and Kirk when I was 5 years old or something.
Oh, so man.
It's kind of like always just being on the scene, being around the music, falling in love with it, being exposed to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no pivotal moment. There was no time where I said, this is what I want to do. I think I always felt that.
That you're there. Who were like, you know, I've read Alan Dawson, and who's been like a guru for so many drummers. And Jack DeJohnette were so important for you. How did you connect with them, and what did you kind of take from them? I'll put it like that.
Well, Alan Dawson was like, he was also like, had lived in the neighborhood I lived in. In fact, his brother lived across the street from me. So I knew him since I could remember. And he didn't take me as a student until I was about 14, I think, because he didn't want to deter me. He didn't want his discipline to deter me. So finally, when I was 14, I started studying with him. But I would go see him and hear him all the time. And he was so smooth and so musical, and, you know, had amazing technique and coordination, and just like the consummate drummer, you know. And I think, you know, he just influenced me back in those days. He was the standard to try to reach, you know. And I saw a lot of drummers come through Boston, of course, all the greats. But I probably saw him more than everybody because he lived there. So he was, you know, also one of the greats, but he was also a local hero.
Yeah.
So I think that's why, you know, once I started studying with him, he's, you know, influenced me even more. So that was, you know, mid to late teens. And then around 17, 18, Jack DeJohnette really became a huge influence. And then I started hanging out with him as well, and going to his house, and just, you know, starting to look at music a little differently.
In what sense?
Just being more open, because I was,
okay,
you know, like such a jazz head. And so he and his wife, Lydia, would turn me on to other music, and I go to concerts with them.
Wow.
You know, they turned me on to the Yellow Jackets. I think it was their first album.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. They turned me on to Sweet Honey in the Rock, who then became, you know, good friends of mine, and, you know, people that I, you know, really followed and went to so many concerts. You know, I would go to, I went to a reggae concert upstate with them once. I think it was Burning Spear.
Oh, wow. I love that band.
Yeah. Yeah. I went to, Keith Jarrett did a classical concert with a string quartet. Events of that. So just things that I wouldn't have normally done. And they were turning me on to Wild Chapatulas, and, you know, people that I just didn't know.
Wow. Was he important for I mean, like in the beginning 80s?
Jack?
Yeah, like introducing yourself to the jazz scene, because, like, you know, I have the records of you with Mulgrew Miller. I love that stuff, and you know, Greg Osby and Scofield, and like, how did you enter the New York jazz scene? I mean, was he helping you a lot in this way, or?
Well, he actually encouraged me to move to New York.
Oh, okay.
I was going to visit him. I was still in school at Berkeley, and he said, well, if you want to see how good you are, you put yourself in the environment where the competition is the greatest.
Yeah.
And you sink or swim. So I moved to New York.
Well, how old were you then?
18.
Wow, man. Okay. That's heavy.
But I also moved with a gig, because Clark Terry said, when you come to New York, you know, you got a gig.
Oh,
so when I moved, Clark asked me to go to Europe with him that summer. So I played with Clark for a couple of years.
Wow.
So it's nice to move to New York with a gig. At least, you
Sure.
know, you know, might not have to, you know, have another job or struggle quite as much.
Yeah. How was this first European tour like for you? Being 18, going to Europe still, you know, like with no EU, like 80s kind of funny times actually in Europe, if I remember.
Yeah, I mean, well, going to Europe was great. I had never been. It was like on tour. I remember we went to Charlie Parker's wife's house, Shan Parker. I had started eating things. He had me trying escargot and cassoulet, things I had never eaten before. And we were in Spain, and he encouraged me to spend a whole week's salary on a leather coat. Just seeing things kind of through his view. Yeah. And that was great. At the time, that was really great for me. And then New York, you're right, was very tricky at that time. Lots of drugs, lots of bad neighborhoods. I lived in one of them. Well, I went from one bad neighborhood to the next because it was cheaper, and
sure.
At that age you feel invincible.
But how did you get then all those gigs? With Lester Bowie and Pharaoh or Stan Getz or all these guys. Like
you just kind of on the scene, and people hear of you, and you do one thing and it leads to another. People come out, back then people would come out to hear people. Yeah. So if I had one gig, people were coming out, and people also knew me from before because I sat in with a lot of people when they came to Boston. So I already had a bit of a reputation when I moved to New York. Wow. Lester Bowie lived up the street. 2 blocks away, basically. So I used to go hang out, with him and his family. Wow. Yeah, it's just, it's a community. I mean, even the different styles of jazz, it's still a community. Yeah. I mean, Cecil Taylor used to come out all the time. He was man. Wow. My gigs, and I never played with him, but I feel like I knew him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How beautiful. Like you then decided to go to the West Coast, right?
Yeah,
afterwards.
December of 1988.
Because was that also the main reason you kind of became the band leader, or did you already lead bands in New York already?
I sometimes led. I remember I came over to Germany once for a festival, and was still living in New York, and brought a band, and sometimes led bands, different things in New York. But I wasn't focused on it. But I was always writing, so I was always kind of ready to lead a band, if somebody asked me to, but I wasn't pursuing it, so to say.
How did the real life story happen, actually? I mean, what that you decided to do that? I mean,
well, I was playing on the road at the time. Was I playing with, I can't remember if I was playing with Wayne or with David Sanborn. Wow. That's hard. I can't remember. I don't remember which one I was with first, but because on the album, I remember I had some people that I had played with Sanborn, and some people that I had played with Wayne. So maybe I did both of them. Oh, I think I did do both of them in the same year.
Oh man, come on, really?
Yeah, because now I remember, because I remember once saying, yeah, in one year I played with Stan Getz, David Sanborn, and Wayne Shorter, which are three totally different styles.
Wow.
So I remember now, yeah. So I don't know. I had an attorney who was trying to, get me a deal. There was a couple of different people interested. I think Jack actually helped get that ball rolling. The attorney was also Jack's attorney, and what's the guy's name? Ricky. He went on to run MCA, and Ricky Schultz. And so we started, and Jack had done something with him. He had a label, or was running a label. And so we went to Ricky, and he was interested. But then Richard Seidel at Verve was interested. So it was really those two labels we were going back and forth a little bit with, and then, the attorney, who also was friends, of course, with attorneys and the president of Verve, who was Dick Asher. Anyway, I followed my attorney's advice and went with Verve.
Mm.
So Jack actually did have something to do with it, with as far as helping me with the attorney and the first person we went to.
Was it hard for you, you know, leading a band or being a band leader? I mean, since you were quite young, you know, for a band leader, but those standards, I think nowadays, like people become band leaders at 17 or something like it. But
yeah,
how do you see yourself if you look now back then, or even your development as band leading goes?
Well, I was already playing with a lot of people. I think you need to play with people that are better than you for a while. You know, I think you need to be groomed, you know, and learn and get better from others. If you're just playing with peers all the time from the beginning, I mean, something develops that way too. Some kind of sound can develop that way too. But I think with jazz, it's a continuum, and it's a tradition of passing down something to the next generation. So I think I did quite a bit of that even before making a record at 23. And I don't think I was ever going to stop doing that. You know, like I was going to still play with Wayne, and then I went on to play with Herbie and, you know, Al Jarreau and different people. So I was always going to take gigs, but I still wanted to get some of my own music out there and tour a little bit as a leader. Because I think I saw back then that's really the way that you sustain a career, having your own statements. You can make a whole career being a sideman or side person. I don't say sideman anymore. A side person for someone else. But it can be limiting, you know, as well. So if you have something to say, some people don't want to be a band leader, and that's valid too. I think if you're writing music, you're naturally going to want to play it at some point.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of band leading.
Yeah. No, that's for sure. Yeah. How did you, through your career, then decide where to go as leading groups? You know, when I look at your albums, you know, Jazz is a Spirit, then you have Structure. Like everything is such a coherent story with different players. Like how did you decide, or even nowadays? I mean, nowadays, okay, this one is connected with the book, but like in the past, where will you go regarding leading bands?
You're asking how I decided how to do things? I mean, I don't know. I just kind of let the spirit take me. I listen to the, you know, the universe. You just get inspired different ways at different times in your life.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you have to make the most of what you have.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just that simple. You have a certain access to certain things, certain people, and then you make the most of that, and then you keep trying to expand.
Yeah.
The older you get and the more creative, you know, you become creative in a different way as you mature. You have other things you want to say. I like themes. I think it gives me something to focus on.
Yeah.
I like vocalists. So I've done a lot of work with vocalists. I like vocal music. And I like, you know, like when I started the band Social Science, I mean, I like younger musicians, and I think it's important to stay in touch with what's happening on the scene that's kind of fresh and new. I never wanted to be stuck, you know, in the past. I'm not saying that everything I do is fresh or new, but I feel like I'm influenced by, you know, people that are younger than me.
Yeah, you're basically slowly taking over the role where you were once, right?
Oh yeah, well, that's our job.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you have to do, right? Like time is doing that. I'm not doing it. Time is done.
Now, but you have a lot to say, of course, as a composer and drummer, of course. I mean, what you've done already. So it's a great learning experience for the younger musicians to play, of course, in your groups, and I guess for you as well, you know, like you said, to play with younger musicians, it's always great to hear what they do, and it's like, man, what is this? I love that.
Yeah, and it's exactly, because it's a different language.
Yeah,
the language evolves.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Trying to see how you fit in, if you fit in.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned before, I saw you for the first time live with Herbie in Ljubljana, and you know, we mentioned Wayne before, and how did your story then with Herbie begin, and how was your experience with Herbie like to play with him?
Well, I met Herbie. Well, I met him before I knew Wayne. I was just at a gig, but I met him to hang out with him and play with him through Wayne. And we played a couple of times in LA, and one time was for a celebration of life for somebody. It was Wayne, Herbie, myself, and Stanley Clark, and somebody heard that and brought us to a festival. And so then I played with them there, and at that festival, Herbie said, "Oh, I'm going on tour. I need a drummer, but I need a young drummer because it doesn't pay very much, and it's hip hop." And I had been booked to play that summer with Stan Getz, and he passed away, so I was left without any work that summer. So I told him I would do it because I didn't have anything else to do. And that began my relationship with him and playing in different settings with him.
Yeah. How was he as a band leader? I mean, how he has been?
He's very much like Wayne too. I mean, it doesn't say a lot, you just kind of they let the music take you where it's gonna go, and they don't they try to hire people, I think, that whose voices they want to hear, so they don't tell you a lot. I wish I could be more like that, actually. I think I have more like, okay, I want to do this. Can we try this? Can we?
Oh, okay.
I'm always trying to craft and shape things, and then sometimes I have to just step back and maybe don't do it, but then, often something, it's the producer in me. I can't help myself.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. What's otherwise on the schedule for you for this year? I mean, not to take more of your time, like, do you have some upcoming tours or gigs or new projects coming up?
I have a couple gigs this summer with New Standards, North Sea Jazz Festival.
Oh, wow, beautiful.
In Portugal at Funko, and I'm saying it right, Funko. And I'm playing a couple of gigs with a former student at Berkeley, the master's program, Yassai. He's a French pianist. And I have a couple of gigs in France with him. I don't know if I say his name right, Karapetyan. I'm bad with names sometimes. And then, the Monterey Jazz Festival, a celebration for Wayne at the Hollywood Bowl in August.
Beautiful.
So lots of different little things. And I have a installation coming up in Boston, part of something I do, visual work that involves a lot of different elements, and multidisciplinary project under the umbrella of the Jazz Without Patriarchy project. And the installation is shifting the narrative, and it's got these different elements.
Beautiful.
We're trying to expand more in other areas. A few things around the city that I don't normally play the Boston area, but I am a few times in the next few months, so that's cool. Tour later in the year, celebrating Wayne with John and Danilo and Esperanza.
Oh, wow, really? Wow.
Beautiful. So just different things.
Wow. Otherwise, just one last question. Like, what do you practice nowadays? What do you work on?
I wish. I'm so busy that I haven't practiced in years.
Oh, I mean, like, if you do some playing or researching as a drummer, where are you now? Like, where is your interest?
I literally don't have time.
Oh shit, yeah, sure.
You know, I mean, I'm listening to music all the time and listening, you know, because I have a radio show. And it's only an hour a week, but I still have to.
Yeah.
It's you know, I want to always bring some new music because it's a station called Real Jazz, Sirius XM, but that's a pretty conservative jazz station. So my show is Future Flavors, which is you know, bringing something that the station doesn't play. So I'm always looking at new music and listening and yeah.
Cool. Terri Lyne, thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. And
you know, nice talking to you because you asked some good questions. It wasn't, you know, the typical boring questions, and you were very well informed. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Nice to hear that. And I hope to see you in Europe very soon. You're a little bit too far if at the North Sea Jazz Festival, but you know, when you come to Vienna, I'll definitely catch you. So
okay.
And
all right.
Keep it strong like you do now. So beautiful to hear all this.
Thank you. I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, you too. Ciao. Bye.
Ciao.